Uncut. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of COASTER-net Uncut. Danny, we have not done an Uncut episode in a very, very long time. So long that COASTER-net officially turned 20 years old August 1st. How cool is that?
Next year we can drink.
So 1998 was when one Devin Olson started COASTER-net.
Yeah, how about that?
And we've been around for 20 years, one of the oldest coaster websites out there. So we figured let's do an Uncut episode talking about roller coasters. No more rumors. We're not going to talk about rumors tonight.
Not tonight.
About news or announcements or any of that. We're going to get back to where we started, Danny, and we're going to talk about roller coasters. And what we're going to do tonight is we are going to rank every RMC ever made that we have ridden. We should put that asterisk. So we will not be talking about Medusa at Six Flags Mexico or Wildfire out at Colmartin because we have not been on those. Maybe next year for me, for both of them. Who knows?
Yeah, and I got to let Rob Dole know that I will get on the RMC over there on the Germany trip next year with the coaster crew.
On Robin Hood, right?
Yeah, is it? Yeah, it's RMC Robin Hood, I think, is the one they're doing.
Yeah,
right? I always get those two confused, Robin Hood and Loop Guru, or not to be confused with Rougarou. Yeah, Robin Hood will close October 2018, and they're supposed to be doing the RMC treatment to Robin Hood. So hopefully, crossing my fingers, in 2019, I'll get to ride RMC Robin Hood.
You never quite know, though, right? So,
well.
So we took all of the topper track rides, the ground-up woodies. We took all the iron horses. We took the single rails, all the stuff that RMC makes. We didn't talk about Skywarps or, Joker Free Flies because those are technically made by other manufacturers.
Mm-hmm.
So everything that RMC makes in a complete package. So we're not talking about things like Tremors where they just did topper track on a few pieces of it. Just the RMC produced roller coasters, and we both made lists of the ones that we rode, ranked them, and then we averaged them together to get the list that we're going to talk to you about that list tonight.
Now, Andy, are we going to go from the bottom up, or are we going to go from the top down?
Well, that's a good question because number one shouldn't be a surprise to anyone, really.
Right. So it's like, do you bury the hatchet at the beginning, or do you just kind of
let's go bottom up because we're going to irritate a few people with number 14.
Yeah, let's get all the riffraff off the video right away.
Yeah, have them post their nasty comments down below because number 14 is Storm Chaser, and if I could have ranked it lower than 1, I would have. But I could not rank it any lower than the lowest spot we had. Storm Chaser to me is a whole lot of nothing. And I find it funny, Danny, that all of a sudden this year, a whole bunch of Storm Chaser fans are coming out there saying that Storm Chaser is not that good anymore.
That is strange, isn't it? I mean, quite a few people who have always been Storm Chaser fans through and through have said, it's whether it's they feel like it's lost a little something or
those
whatever.
Magic Wheels have lost their touch apparently.
Well, but the thing with Storm Chaser, and we've talked about it plenty of times here, is it does a lot of things that the other RMCs do better. Our Storm Chaser does some really good things, has some good elements, but then it's got some not so good elements. And generally speaking, I think most of the RMCs have a pretty good complete package of elements. Speed is an issue on some of them for sure, which we'll talk about a little bit here. Storm Chaser is one of the ones where speed does tend to be an issue at times, but generally speaking, it has good elements. It doesn't have amazing, outstanding, incredible elements that a lot of the others tend to have. I think Storm Chaser is a good ride, maybe even a really good ride. I don't think it's a great ride, but it's a lot of good elements, a lot of good maneuvers. It's a real solid ride. It's not a bad ride, but I don't think it's as strong as some of the other rides that.
If I had to rank Storm Chaser, and just give it like one of those types of rankings, I would say somewhere between average and good. That I think average, saying it's average is too low of a ranking for it. Saying it's good is too high of a ranking. I think it's somewhere between average and good, where it's a solid ride. It's nice for that park. It gives that park, something that people can ride. Probably the best coaster in that park in Kentucky Kingdom.
You could take your pick between Storm Chaser, Lightning Run. I wouldn't have an issue with either one, to be honest.
So moving on, I guess, and we get to number 13 on the list, and that is the one that you wrote and I didn't. So we did take an average of this and factor that in. So it did come in at number 13. This is Wonder Woman, the single rail coaster down at Fiesta, Texas. And you had said that you liked Railblazer much better because you felt that Wonder Woman was a little rougher.
Yeah, I did feel that Wonder Woman was a little rougher in a lot of different spots. I do think that some of the visuals on Railblazer are quite a bit better, and I don't think it's going to come as any surprise that Railblazer is coming up on the next spot. Is that correct here?
Yeah, Railblazer is 12, so we have both the single rails back to back here.
Yeah, now, and you had ridden Railblazer. It was funny. We talked about this before. I remember you wrote. It was in a Facebook group somewhere, and you said, "Having ridden Railblazer, I can only hope that Wonder Woman's better." And then I immediately replied to it because this was in that 2-week span where you had ridden Railblazer, I had ridden Wonder Woman, but hadn't been to Railblazer yet. And I said, "Well, I can tell you, having ridden Wonder Woman, I can only hope that Railblazer is better." I used the same comment, flipped it around there. I will say the theming. The location is really nice on Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman is a pretty ride. It's in a good location, but Railblazer has the better theming. The rock tunnels, the rock work, the last corkscrew goes over the one piece of rock work, and there's a nice little head chopper that is non-existent on Wonder Woman because there's nothing going on around the ride besides the ride itself. I think that did add a little bit to Railblazer for sure. And Railblazer felt smoother to me. And the other two people in our group, Adam and Sue, both said that as well. And our friend Josh, in the Loop Ranger, he was there the week before us, and he's from Texas, and he had also said that he thought Railblazer was quite a bit smoother. So I don't think I'm crazy because I've heard that from 4 or 5 different people who've ridden both saying that they thought Railblazer was the smoother of the two rides. So I think
maybe that accounts for the extra, Railblazer. Wonder Woman's been running an extra month and a half almost.
Maybe, the extreme Texas heat is probably maybe a little bit more than Northern California. But I think you're talking about comparable stuff there.
Yeah.
It is quite a bit hotter down in San Antonio than is in the San Francisco area, but it still gets hot up there. Again, much like Storm Chaser, they're both good rides. They both have a lot of good elements. I think Storm Chaser has a little bit more, not so much dead spots, but stuff where you go through an element or you go over a hill on Storm Chaser and it's like, well, that's almost what I wanted it to be. That's almost what I had in mind. And the single rails didn't really have anything like that for me. The single rails, I thought, delivered on every element, and I think every element I was satisfied and happy with. And there were some where I was really thrilled with. But they're pretty short. We talk only 30, 35 seconds. Ride time, really. When you drop off the lift, it's like a 30-second ride. Yeah. If they had a little bit more to them, then maybe they're moving up this list, but I think there's just not enough to them in order to really break into the top tier of RMCs.
Well, and where I said, Storm Chaser is somewhere between that average to good, I would put the single rails in the good category, that they're good, solid rides. They're good additions to the park. I would take
the single rails over like your smaller Eurofighters that are the same size. I wouldn't take it over like a Monster or a Cannibal, but I would take them over like the SpongeBob type rides and Untamed and stuff like that for sure.
And to be honest with you, I wasn't also really thrilled by the restraint system on Railblazer either. That seatbelt restraint system just.
It's again, I think the restraints are almost what I had in mind.
Yeah,
like,
and
they're
it's like,
almost what I wanted them to be.
it's 2018, and that's the best you can come up with, and it's like, I don't know.
It wasn't so much the vest that bothered me as much as it was straddling the track was a little strange, and maybe it's because I'm shorter, because I haven't heard many other people complain about it. Your feet are spread apart so that you're straddling the track, and it's not so much that it's painful or uncomfortable. Uncomfortable isn't even the right word. I think it's just a little bit, it's not quite natural is how I described it. It's not uncomfortable, but it's not quite natural. And it's just on Railblazer, when we rode it, multiple times using the fast lane, after, doing that multiple times in a row, it started to feel like, my knees feel just a little bit cockeyed right now. Like they're kind of not quite facing the right direction.
Well, on me, I have a broader chest and stuff, so those seatbelts like really cut in, and the seats are poorly designed. I had to sit in two different seats, and the second seat finally, showed as being locked on the computer screen, and the first seat was much tighter. So I'm glad I didn't sit in that seat, but I didn't like the restraints. It was uncomfortable from start to finish for me, and I'm just like,
they could be better.
It could be better. It's 2018.
Unpopular opinion here. I liked the single rails better in the front seat. I am one of the few that held that opinion. Because the drop is incredible in the back, and that little drop off the helix is better in the back. But I thought the inversions were much better in the front, especially on Railblazer with the visual, with the rock work. I thought that improved it a little bit. And my favorite part of the ride was actually going into that dive loop, because you come up over the top of the hill, you're getting pulled out of your seat, and then you get flipped over while you're getting that airtime. In the back seat, you don't really get the airtime in the front row going into that element. You kind of just get the twist and dive. And the ride's going so damn fast, you still get great ejector airtime in the front seat on that drop off the helix anyways. So unpopular opinion, I like the single rails better in the front.
Coming in at number 11 is going to upset a few people as well. But longtime listeners of this show should not be surprised by this. That is New Texas Giant, because longtime listeners will know that I have a great dislike of New Texas Giant. Once again, a good ride, but I don't think it moves into the next echelon. And I've always said that the first drop is really great. The first few elements are really great, but once you start hitting, those overbanks over and over and over, it kills all the speed until the end of the ride. And I'm just like, okay, it's time to get off here now. I do not like how New Texas Giant slows down significantly at the end of the ride. I find it amazing that you have two rides that are very similar, before their Iron Horse conversions in Steel Vengeance and New Texas Giant, with Mean Streak and Texas Giant, and they're completely opposite of one another and what the ride experience is. And I think that's really cool that you can take a structure that is, for all intents and purposes, very similar to one another and come up with two completely different rides out of that structure. I think that's kind of what makes those Iron Horses really exciting. And it might also mean something like Hurler at Carowinds. Like, some people have said, well, if they ever RMC that, would it just be a clone of Twisted Timbers? And I don't know if it has to be. It might be completely different. I don't know. But I am not a New Texas Giant fan. That's why it comes in at number 11 here.
Yeah, Texas Giant, I think you can tell now, because I wrote it very early on in 2012 and then again in 2013, so before we had a lot of these others, and I really enjoyed Texas Giant. I still do. I don't have it ranked as high as I used to in terms of the RMCs. I think a lot of the newer ones are better. They're absolutely more intense. There's more airtime. There's stronger airtime. You can tell that Texas Giant was maybe the first one because they tried some things. I think some things worked very well, like the speed hills, and then there's some other things that maybe didn't work out so well that they have gotten much better with. And I think Steel Vengeance is the ultimate example of that, considering how similar the two original rides were to each other.
I think the big answer to that is the straight up overbanks, where you do not see straight up overbanks anymore that go 90 degrees.
Steel Vengeance has very few of them. It's got one in between the two inversions, and then it's got one or two late in the course. But New Texas Giant has them all over the place, and maybe that was the downfall. I have said that New Texas Giant still has its place. I still think it's a really good ride, but New Texas Giant, the comparison I've made is it feels like the B&M hypercoaster of all the RMCs. Like It's a little bit tamer. It's probably more comfortable than a lot of them. The Gerstlauer trains that it and Iron Rattler have, I think, are more comfortable than the other trains in terms of their restraint system. So I mean, there's something to be said about that. But it's the slightly tamer. Not quite as it's more rewritable. We talk about rewritability, and if you color ride it very rewritable, then that means it wasn't as intense as some of the other ones. So I think Texas Giant is the slightly tamer, more rewritable RMC of the bunch. Take that as you will.
Yeah. Number 10 is Goliath at Six Flags Great America. I really like Goliath. I have it ranked in my top 10 wood coasters. I think it's one of those rides that's really good to probably bordering on great, above average.
Yeah.
Above good. And some of the drawbacks is that is a little short. That it does you do race through that track incredibly fast. Even with the hang time you get on the two inversions, and I think a lot of people, when they ride Goliath, they're like, wow, that's a really, really fun ride. But when it comes time to rank stuff, I think that's when Goliath gets hit the hardest. That when you're on it, you enjoy it, you love it, and when you get back home, you kind of forget it a little bit.
Yeah, Goliath is one of those where everything it does is great. And it's one of those where I kind of wish it did a little bit more. There's a few things here and there. I mean, the drop is great. That first overbank element is really, really strong. The speed hill is strong. The dive loop is strong. The 0G stall is pretty damn good too. The last set of overbanks is kind of, ho-hum, especially if you're not towards the front of the train. But it's one of those things where the size and speed, the elements are all really good, but it's one of those you just want a little bit more out of, I think, in terms of what it actually does.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. We actually have a three-way tie for the next spot, which
boy,
at number 7. So you kind of see that once you start getting to the middle of these RMCs, me and you have varying opinions on what the mid-level RMC consists of.
And that's why we end up with this goofy tie here.
Yeah, so we got a three-way tie of Twisted Colossus, Joker at Discovery Kingdom, and Wicked Cyclone at New England. So it's funny because me and you basically, our opinions and how we view and perceive Twisted Colossus and Wicked Cyclone is basically switched between me and you. I look at Twisted Colossus. I really like it. I love the stuff that it does. I don't mind the lift hill in between. I have it ranked a lot higher, like in my mid-20s. Whereas you with Wicked Cyclone, that's like Wicked Cyclone's in your like mid-20s too, probably, right?
Yeah, Wicked Cyclone, I don't have my list right in front of me. Wicked Cyclone, I think, is in, like, my lower teens. Yeah, it's in my teens.
Yeah, so I don't have Twisted Colossus that high, but basically our perceptions of these rides are kind of pretty much flipped, where you kind of dislike Twisted Colossus, and I dislike Wicked Cyclone, and vice versa.
Yeah, and my issue with Twisted Colossus has never been what it does. The things that it does do, I think, are really spectacular. That being said, I don't like 30 seconds of great ride and then a minute and a half rest and then another great 30 seconds. I mean, they talked
longer than 30 seconds, isn't it? No,
I don't think it is. I really don't think it is. And
See, I don't think you've had a good ride on Twisted Colossus.
I haven't. I will come right out and say that.
I've given
I haven't.
Cyclone, like when I rode Wicked Cyclone, I rode it on a hot day in June. That there's no reason that ride should be running unless it rides better in the cold. But that is not what I've heard out of New England. Is that it doesn't ride better in the cold, that it runs better in the heat. And I feel like I've had the best ride that I'm going to get out of Wicked Cyclone. I feel like I've had that ride already, and I still don't like it. So I don't think you've had your best ride on Twisted Colossus.
No, I will come out right now and say I don't think I have either. When we went a couple years ago, it was down most of the day. We didn't get on it that many times. We're going back again in about a month, and we're spending a day and a half at Magic Mountain. We're getting the Flash Pass, so I am certainly planning on getting at least a couple rides on Twisted Colossus, because more than any other RMC that I've been on, Twisted Colossus is the ride that has not gotten a fair shake from me. I always say, we talk about, I always feel like for me to really digest what a ride does and to get a good idea of how I feel about it. Now, you always say I only need one ride on a ride to figure out where I rank it. I only need one ride on a ride to figure out if I like it or not, but to really decide where it goes in my ranking.
You like everything, so that's.
I do like everything. That's just
you
about.
need no rides on a ride to know that you like it.
But for me to really rank a ride and feel like I've properly ranked it, and it's really where I feel good about it, I like to get at least 2 or 3 rides, front, back, and then pick your favorite. Or front back night, a lot of people say. And I don't have 3 rides on Twisted Colossus.
And see, I'll be honest with you, there has only been one ride ever where I rode a different area in the train and significantly changed my opinion of it. And that's a ride coming up on this list up here. And that's Iron Rattler. That is the only ride I've ever ridden that I sat in one seat to begin with and then sat in a different seat and said, wow, this is significantly better up here.
Yeah.
Usually there's a difference, like a slight difference of, hey, if I'm going to rank something, 30 or 35, but I think Iron Rattler has significantly better seats in different places. I'm like, wow, that was a lot better. I've never had that happen on any other ride.
Well, and Wicked Cyclone, I've always had really good rides on Wicked Cyclone, even in the spring. I have maintained that Wicked Cyclone is a ride I do think you need to sit in the front seat. Partially being, I think the elements are a hell of a lot better, even though the drop is better in the back. I think the rest of the ride is much, much better in the front, and it does get slow at the end. We've talked about that before, but I think in the front seat, when you're in that structure and you have the visuals, I think the visual trick to make it seem like it feels like you're going faster than you are on that ride, more than a lot of the others, in the same way. Now, I would make the comparison to Steel Vengeance, but the problem is Steel Vengeance is still hauling ass at the end of the ride, so you are going really fast. Wicked Cyclone, you're not. But the visual trick of being within the structure of the ride still makes it feel like you're going very fast when you're in the front seat and you can see all the stuff around you a little bit better, and you don't have, you're not grounded by, the heads of the riders in front of you. I think in the back, Wicked Cyclone is still a good ride. I don't think it's nearly as good as it is in the front seat. What was the other? So Twisted Colossus, Wicked Cyclone. What's the other one?
It's the forgotten ride of the Joker.
Joker, right? Well, and that maybe shouldn't come as a surprise, because the comparison, maybe more than any other pair of RMCs, Wicked Cyclone and Joker have been compared by many to be very, very similar. The problem is there are very few people who have ridden both of them because they're on opposite coasts. And Joker, I feel like, is probably the one that the least number of people have ridden. I did get a very Wicked Cyclone feel on Joker. I didn't think Joker had... I think the best element on either of those two coasters might be on Joker, but I think Wicked Cyclone is the better overall ride. I think the airtime is a little bit more intense. There is more. Wicked Cyclone is more compact and is within its structure a little bit more than Joker is, which Joker gets slow at the end a little bit too.
Yeah.
And I think because you're not within the structure, that visual trick doesn't work as much. The airtime is still pretty good even towards the end of the ride on Joker. The inversions are good enough for sure. There's a couple of the overbanks that I think are a little bit of throwaways on Joker. Just sort of like the little the bank turn going around the circle on Wicked Cyclone towards the end of the ride before the last inversion is kind of a little bit of a throwaway part to just kind of change direction. So I think Wicked Cyclone is still a little bit better than Joker, but there are a lot of comparisons to be made between those two rides, I think. So I am not surprised one bit to see the two of them tied with each other. And I guess it shouldn't be a surprise that Twisted Colossus is kind of jumbled in there too, because the way I feel about Wicked Cyclone, that's how you feel about Twisted Colossus and vice versa.
Yeah.
Really. So I'm not surprised that these three are kind of jumbled together here.
And Joker for me is in my mid-30s, probably lower 30s. So Joker's I think is once again a very good ride. I enjoyed it. I texted you right after getting off it. I said, I'm kind of getting the same feeling here with a lot of these RMCs now, that things are becoming ho-hum and it might have also been that I really enjoyed my rides on Twisted Cyclone and Steel Vengeance. So it's hard to get to, that next level. Joker's not going to compete with at least Steel Vengeance in any poll. So,
No.
It's hard to, ride those two rides a few weeks apart and not compare them at some point. So I think most people feel the same way about Joker too, where it's a middle of the pack RMC, which is,
I don't know many people who've ridden it, to be completely honest with you.
There you go. But here it's smack dab in the middle, so I think that's the perfect place for it, to be honest. Coming at number 6 is Twisted Cyclone, a ride that you have not ridden. I really liked. I kind of thought that Twisted Cyclone was a little bit Steel Vengeance light. That it does a whole lot of the same. Like I got a lot of the same feeling going through the track that I'm sure the designers of both those rides had similar ideas between the two of them, especially when you get towards the endings of those rides. The wave turn on Twisted Cyclone is one of my favorite elements on any RMC. I think that wave turn is significantly better than any other wave turn I've been on, including Outlaw Run, because it kind of throws you out of the seat. Whereas, Outlaw Run, you're kind of just like running the side. It's not really like trying to throw you out of the side, I don't feel. This wave turn, it kind of gives you a little airtime and kind of, tosses you to the side a little bit, which I think makes it the best of the wave turns. And then, it's just fun. It's a short ride. And I think if they would have made it any longer, it would have fallen into the same trap that I don't like Wicked Cyclone for. That Wicked Cyclone kind of dies at the end, gets real slow at the end. And this ride never gets that chance to do that because it's so short. But even though, and a lot of people commented on, during that media day, even though it is a short ride by time, it doesn't feel like a short ride to me. It feels like a full ride, like you've gone through a course. Like Goliath kind of feels like a short ride. This I don't know. I didn't get that sense from it. And maybe I was just happy to be there that day and happy to be in Atlanta. I don't know. But I really enjoyed my Twisted Cyclone rides, and I think I have it ranked out of the RMCs, third. So that's, to me.
Yeah, it's Twisted Cyclone is one that I was hoping to get to this year. It doesn't look like it's going to happen. Just with all the other rides opening up this year, that was kind of one that, based on what I've heard and what I've seen from it, it sounds like if there was a ride in 2018 that could probably wait till next year, that was probably the one, especially with, Steel Vengeance and Twisted Timbers coming out and both being closer in terms of the RMCs. So haven't ridden that one yet. Looking forward to it. Would hope that it would at least, compete with the rides that we've been talking about here, the Jokers and whatnot, and the New Texas Giants, at least on my list, and Twisted Colossus. I would hope that it would at least compete to be in that discussion with some of those rides. And if so, then it's going to be a fine ride. But, probably I have to wait till 2019 to find out.
Coming in at number 5 is Iron Rattler, one that I really, really like. Iron Rattler is in my top 10. And like I said, this was one that, for me, I rode it in the very back row, and I thought it was a good ride. Like, I didn't really hate it. I thought it was better because I rode New Texas Giant, like, the day before. So I thought it was better than New Texas Giant, even in the back row. But then riding up closer to the front, like, towards, like, the third row, and you get that real ejector airtime going back into the canyon, that's really what sold it for me in Iron Rattler. And having just ridden it this past haunt season, and I thought that I wasn't going to like it as much, and I liked it just as much as I used to. So it's still in my top 10.
And, we talked about this a little bit on the Texas Road Trip Rundown a while back. I had always been a Texas Giant over Iron Rattler. Now, I had only ridden them on the same trip once back in 2013, Iron Rattler's debut year. And Texas Giant was a milestone for me, so it did have a little bit of sentimental value to it. But for the last 5 years, really, because I hadn't ridden them since then, I had been New Texas Giant very slightly. And I had always liked Texas Giant in the back. Well, back in 2018, back Memorial Day, rode it. I ended up changing over to a front row rider on Texas Giant. And on Iron Rattler, I was a front row rider, and this past trip, I turned into a back row fan on Iron Rattler, which surprised me a little bit. I think the drops, Iron Rattler you could make the argument that Iron Rattler has the best 2 drops on any of the RMCs, being that first drop, which has lateral forces in 3 different spots. And then the canyon drop, the double down canyon drop that we talk about, which has been on the RideWire Choice Awards as a favorite element before, in the nominees there. The back row of Iron Rattler for me, we rode it 11 times while we were there, which was a lot of those coming at dusk or after dark. Really, really an incredible ride. And I am happy to say, and I am not ashamed to say, that I've switched over to Team Iron Rattler when it comes to the Texas RMCs. Iron Rattler is the better ride. Iron Rattler is better than New Texas Giant. There's not a doubt about it. And I certainly, of any ride on that Texas trip, I had a newfound respect for Texas Giant for what it was, but I had a newfound love for Iron Rattler. Iron Rattler
is by far the best ride in Texas. Like, there's,
I think it is. Certainly the
Iron
best.
Rattler. I'm trying to think of, is there a better ride in the South than Iron Rattler?
Iron Rattler is probably the best coaster for many, 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 many miles down that way.
The closest thing I can even come up with is Fury as being better.
I think you can make the argument for Outlaw Run, which we haven't gotten to on this list yet, so we'll see where that's going to come. I really enjoyed Boardwalk Bullet as well, but I think Iron Rattler is still probably the better ride than Boardwalk.
So coming in at number 4 now is Twisted Timbers, a ride that I have not been on, but you have.
Much like Twisted Cyclone, this is a little odd because it's going off of just one of our rankings. So, I mean, I'm a big Twisted Timbers fan over here, and it's a really solid ride. And if you like the way I've talked about Twisted Timbers, we'll talk a little bit about it. If you like the barrel roll wing over drop on Storm Chaser,
which I do,
they changed it on Twisted Timbers to make it better, to give a little more airtime on it. That has been stated by Alan Schilke himself, that they've changed the shaping of it a little bit to make it a little bit better. I think it is better. And I asked you this before we started recording. I said, what's your favorite part of Storm Chaser? And what did you say?
I said the wing over drop into the first hill.
Yeah, and Twisted Timbers is the wing over drop from Storm Chaser, but better. And then you do an overbank turn, and then you've got Storm Chaser's second hill 3 times in a row in rapid succession, and it's still got a good barrel roll or two. It's got the cutback element thing, which is really cool there at the far end. It does do a little bit of the Storm Chaser thing at the end. I think it's got a much better speed than Storm Chaser. And I went back and forth on Twisted Timbers and Wicked Cyclone for a while because I rode Twisted Timbers. And then I didn't have anything to do the next weekend, and the weather was real nice. I was like, you know what? I'm going to run up to Six Flags New England and ride Wicked Cyclone so I can ride them on back-to-back weekends. And I decided that I like Twisted Timbers just a little bit better. So I would be shocked if you didn't like Twisted Timbers better than at least Wicked Cyclone. I would not be surprised at all if you thought that Twisted Timbers was better than Twisted Cyclone down there at Georgia because they're similar in size. I don't think Twisted Timbers slows down a whole heck of a lot, really, and I think it's got more elements just by numbers than Twisted Cyclone. And you're talking about maybe going down there for Haunt. So I'm
thinking either September, October. I'm gonna head on down to Kings Dominion.
Okay. Yeah, I'm real interested to find out what you think of Twisted Timbers because Twisted Timbers was Steel Vengeance. We knew was going to be good. Time Traveler. I think we knew that was going to be really good. Twisted Timbers, I think, was the ride, and that's the ride that I put number one at my most anticipated because it was closer to me. And you and I were really afraid of the whole speed issue. With Steel Vengeance, how silly we look now on that, right? But Twisted Timbers, I had it number one there because I thought it had the greatest potential to surprise me, and it was probably the most surprising in a good way of the 2018 rides that I've been on. I've been on a lot of them. Steel Vengeance is the ride we all expected to be out of this world. Twisted Timbers was the ride that maybe I didn't expect to get as good of a ride as I did, and then I got a really incredible ride out of it. So I'm interested to see what you think about Twisted Timbers.
Well, I'm excited to get down there for Haunt. For a lot of reasons, because Twisted Timbers and Vader I haven't been on yet, so there's a whole bunch of stuff to do.
Now we only got 3 left here, Andy. So what's the order going to be here?
Tie for second place.
Whoa! Okay, that kind of buries the hatch a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think this should come as a surprise to many. But Lightning Rod and Outlaw Run are tied for 2.
Now that might come as a surprise to people, though.
Yeah, because a lot of people love Lightning Rod, and I get it. I love Lightning Rod too. I have it ranked number 2 for my wood coasters. Voyage being the only one better. You made the comment though, but you said you thought Outlaw Run is better than Lightning Rod on this last.
Yeah, and this is fresh off a trip down to Missouri 2 weeks ago. Yeah. Boy, Lightning Rod is so damn good, isn't it? And I rode Lightning Rod back at the end of June, literally just a week before it had this whole thing where now apparently it might be down for the rest of the year. But then rode Outlaw Run a month later, just a couple weeks ago. And Lightning Rod is the more intense ride. Yeah. It's the faster ride. Yeah. Is it the crazier ride? Probably. The more out of control ride?
See, I don't know. See, because my problem, so I looked at this too. Because when you started talking about, because I had just been on Outlaw Run as well for the first time in a number of years at the end of June when I went down for the Texas Thrill Seekers group outing. And I thought it was running a lot rougher than I remember. Not rough to the point where I'm like, oh, this is uncomfortable, but rough like I was just trying.
Well, I made the comment because Outlaw Run does run steel wheels, whereas all the others run the urethane wheels. So when you get used to your Goliaths and lightning rods, and then you go ride Outlaw Run, and that's one of the things I really like about Outlaw Run is it has the wood coaster feel to it. It feels like more of a wood coaster than Lightning Rod does. I really like that about it.
And the thing about Lightning Rod is that the first half is like very forgettable to me. That ride doesn't really impress me. I shouldn't say impress me because the first half is good, but it doesn't really start standing out above the rest until you start getting to that quad down. And I say it's even with the fifth hill at the end, you can add that in there too. That that sequence, that ending sequence, might be one of the best sequences on any roller coaster anywhere. It's really fantastic. And so the question becomes, Outlaw Run, you have a lot of good stuff throughout the entire ride. The corkscrew at the end may be a little bit of a throwaway. I'm not a huge fan of it. I felt like I was taking it a lot faster than I remember, though.
Yeah.
So that was nice. But I can't sit here and disparage anyone that says Outlaw is better than Lightning Rod, even though I still put Lightning Rod a little bit higher than Outlaw.
Yeah, to me, it came down to this. Lightning Rod is balls to the wall, go, 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 go. But Lightning Rod, even though it is that way, Lightning Rod gets appreciably more intense as you go along.
Yeah.
The double drop at the top is good. It's good. The wave turn is good.
It's good.
And then you get into the twist and shout, and then it really starts to break loose a little bit, and you get more and more intense. Then you do the double up. The top of that double up is really outstanding. Best part of the ride, down into the quad down, and then the fifth hill. The second half of that ride is as intense as just about any sequence of elements on just about any coaster. Outlaw Run's first half, I think, is much, much better than Lightning Rod's first half. And I think the second halves are comparable. Lightning Rod probably has the slightly better finale, but I think Outlaw Run's is right there. I think
once you hit that wave turn, I feel like the ride is pretty much over at that point.
Yeah, see, I disagree. See, I think the little overbank that goes into underneath the lift hill on Outlaw Run, it's not the overbank turn that a lot of the other RMCs have come to do, because what it does a straight drop out of that overbank, and there's airtime even in the front seat, which I think is the better seat on Outlaw Run. And then you go into the wave turn, which is more drawn out than some of the other ones. Yeah. But because of that, you're getting the floater airtime. But you're also getting the lateral throw because it is more drawn out, and it ends lower than it starts. The one on Twisted Cyclone, which I haven't ridden, but I can visually see that it starts and ends at the same height. Same thing with the one on Lightning Rod. It's very symmetrical in that way. Outlaw Run's wave turn goes down a hill. So it's the wave turn, but it's also the drop.
Yeah.
So the train is kind of dropping down from underneath you on the right side, so you're getting the constant throw up to the left while you're also coming out of your seat. And then you go into that speed hill, and then you hit the double barrel roll, and just before you can say, boy, we're starting to slow down, you hit the brake run. And one thing I had always said about Outlaw Run was, it felt a little short to me. I didn't get that feeling this time around, and I got night rides on Lightning Rod last time back at the end of June. I got night rides on Outlaw Run this time around, and I think Outlaw Run's the better night ride because the entire ride is pitch black. When you're at the top, going down that first drop, it's like dropping into a black hole. You can't see a damn thing at the bottom of that drop. Now, I know you can't on Lightning Rod either, but you come from a lit area and you finish in a lit area, whereas Outlaw Run, you start in a dark area and you finish in a dark area until you get to the brake run. So I think Outlaw Run is the more well-rounded ride. I think Outlaw Run is maybe the more complete ride in terms of, a well-rounded group of elements. I think Outlaw Run may be the more unique ride. I think Outlaw Run's probably the better night ride. And in general, I'll say it, maybe an unpopular opinion, I think Outlaw Run is the better ride.
And I still rank Lightning Rod higher, but I can't fault anyone that says
I have them right there. But I think Outlaw Run is slightly better.
Like, both of them have what I see as faults, and both of them have really outstanding parts that make up for those faults. And
Outlaw Run works.
So, and then obviously number one, as we said before, is Steel Vengeance. There's not much more
This is the least surprising part of the show, isn't it?
And there's not much more I can say about Steel Vengeance at this point. Like, we've talked about this ride over and over in the multiple different shows that we've done. The only thing new I have to add is that I did get night rides and my first ever front row ride on this last trip in mid-July. And let me say that front row night ride is really outstanding. It's not going to top our RPOV ride, because that and that first ride that we had
that first ride in the back row on Steel Vengeance, you and I will never top that. And I rode Steel Vengeance again this past weekend. Mid-course hitting just a little bit, not much. Those first two hills after the mid-course, a little bit tamer than they were on media day, but after that, it's still go all the way to the end, and it's still probably the best steel coaster in the world, if not, top 2 or 3, really.
I know you're a big Maverick. I was a big Maverick fan before it, and you were kind of saying that Maverick is still right up there. But I'll tell you what, having been to Coaster Mania, having been to Mid-July, having the night ride, Steel Vengeance, my decision to rank that number 1, even above Raptor, if you that it's far and above, beyond any other ride in the world to me. It's not even a question anymore.
Yeah, I mean, and Maverick is an outstanding ride. I had a real hard time, combining which one I liked better. Steel Vengeance, I think, is still the better ride. But I'll say this. I said it on Instagram on Monday morning when I posted some pictures of Maverick. I said, it's quite possible that the two best steel coasters out there are just several yards apart from each other in the same area.
Like, if you think about how close, like, the Maverick.
When one Rob Dole said it on Sunday morning, he was like, you know what? I don't need to go anywhere else. My two favorite rides are 50 yards apart from each other.
Like, seriously, if you think about it, that when you're coming off of, like, you're entering into the horseshoe turn, and then you got the train station, and then you got, the brake run, or the transfer track. Like, how far are you apart from each other at that point?
Not very.
Not very far.
I mean, you could throw a softball from Steel Vengeance's transfer track and hit Maverick.
Seriously, right? You have to be skilled at it, probably.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Steel Vengeance is right up there. Even when the mid-course hits a slight bit, it's still one of the most crazy, out of control rides.
That first half, those two hills after that first drop.
The first half, the second half, the third half, whatever.
It's ridiculous, and I don't see. Who knows what Cedar Point's going to do, or what anyone else is going to do in the future, but that's going to be a tough ride to top. And the only thing that's going to beat Steel Vengeance is Steel Vengeance itself. That, who knows how long that thing's going to last. But,
well, we'll see.
I'm going to love it while it's here. That's my goal.
Yeah. So hopefully y'all have enjoyed our ranking of this. We wanted to do this actually a few years ago, but we kind of decided that there wasn't enough out there yet. And I brought it up a couple weeks ago. I said, you know what? We've never gone back and ranked the RMCs, and now I think there's enough substance there that we could get a good, 45-minute to an hour-long show out of it. So, I think we've gotten about 45, 50 minutes here or so. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. And, not everybody's going to agree here. I'm sure there's plenty of comments below already by this time of, people telling us that we're idiots and that we hate their favorite ride and that we like their least favorite ride. Unlike it's weird because the B&M hypers are all very, very similar things, but everyone ranks them differently. The RMCs do a lot of the same stuff in different orders, and, some of them are bigger, some of them are smaller, but at the end of the day, everyone's got their own flavor when it comes to the RMCs too. So, I'm interested to maybe put in the comments how you rank all the RMCs you've ridden. I'd be interested to see what some of those other ones are. And then, we got the Thrilling 32 Ride Where Choice Awards coming up, in the coming months here. So we'll see how some of these new ones like Twisted Cyclone, Twisted Timbers, and Steel Vengeance and the single rails end up joining the group here, because I'm sure we'll see at least a couple of them in the field this year.
So as always, thank you for joining us here on COASTER-net Uncut. As always, keep in mind, though, that we do have a number of things coming up here for our 20th birthday. We always have that Patreon that if you feel the need to support us, feel free to. Patreon supporters of, I believe, $10 or more will be receiving one of our brand new 2019 COASTER-net calendars.
That's right. We're bringing back the calendars.
We are bringing back the calendars. They're going to be a little bit different this year. That they are not going to be wall calendars. They're going to be desk calendars. which we think will be a little bit more accessible to people, because who has a wall calendar? I have like 3, but you have none. But I know there will be a special tier on Patreon. I don't remember if it's $10 or $15 that you'll be getting one of those calendars on there. You can also purchase them when we figure out the final pricing. We've finalized the look of the calendar. Now we got to get them printed and figure out how much they're going to cost. But I would assume somewhere around $10 plus shipping. Somewhere around there will be the final price.
To keep them real affordable.
Yeah, trying to keep the price down and not having people paying an arm and a leg for a calendar. Nice as Christmas gifts as always. Beautiful calendars. People love to know.
Yeah, because there's a lot of rides you can't ride without an arm. Right?
Yeah. This every day will not be Rusev Day on this calendar, though, Danny. So, will not be Rusev Day every day. I have that calendar already. That's a different calendar. But anyway, thank you for supporting us here for the last 20 years of COASTER.net. We've enjoyed being here for at least me and you the last 5 of it. So we've been here for some time.
Yeah, I've been here about a year. You've been here 5 years. I've been here about a year longer. So and YouTube, we're coming up on 4 years. We've been doing this YouTube nonsense here. So
and you see all the fly-by-night people. They're here 1 year, they're gone the next. COASTER.
Well, yeah, and you can see how our lives have progressed. I have moved out of college, bought my own house, working for Toyota, and you are sitting in the same room with the stuffed animals and wrestling figurines.
Well, the stuffed animals are new. They're new. Oh man, always the card. So anyway, thank you as always for joining us here. I'm of course Andrew Barczak from Chicago, Illinois.
And Danny Miller from Binghamton, New York.
Right on, Ride Warriors.
See you next time, guys.